thank you so much for joining us, first of all. I want to start us off by asking what brings you a sense of peace or grounding right now in your life?
It all started for me. I saw a meme that was parents live for that 30-second walk around the car from buckling your kids into the car seat to walking around to the driver's side door. And I thought to myself, holy crap, I actually really look forward to that 30 seconds walk around my car. But like that blossomed, mushroomed into these other things of like,
Right.
sometimes it's that first sip of a cup of coffee. Sometimes it's like a really good song comes on your playlist, like just appreciating the moments. Because to me, it's really like we look for joy and calm out there, like it's something we have to find or achieve. To me, it's like, well, actually, there's so many moments of calm and joy that we already have. We just need to pay attention to them. So to me, it's like
Wow.
it's like the found money rule, right?
Yeah, yeah.
You guys are Canadian, so if you had a Tui in your pocket, right, you had it the whole time. But if you found it, now it's like
Right.
free money. It's like, oh god,
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So true.
That is so true.
Wow.
Wow. And I like that you said like even like the first sip of coffee, like for me, waking up and I did this. I don't know if you've heard of the app Fabulous, and I feel like I used to use that app like a few years ago, and like the first things I learned from that app was to drink water the moment you wake up, like a glass of water. And that has been like the one thing that's been like grounding and peaceful for me as of late. Like just like drinking a glass of water, like first thing, dry mouth,
Hmm.
barely open my eyes. And like, so I totally relate when it's like the small things. It's like,
Yeah.
it's when it's not like I just finished a exhausting list. No,
Mhm.
it's like the small things.
Mm.
That's so lovely.
Yeah.
We kind of carry like this younger version of ourselves, kind of like into our work, right? So I wanted to ask you a bit about like when you're working with a lot of folks who are neurodivergent, because that's kind of the work that you do, what memories of your younger self comes to mind most often?
most of the memories I have are sort of, you can split it into sort of two different themes, right? Growing up sort of before high school, where I really sort of fought against my neurodivergence, and high school, post high school, college, university, where I embraced it. Because the idea is most of the
Mm.
friction I felt in my life was friction coming from the psychological weight of masking, trying to be
Mm.
somebody I'm not, right? Listen, guys, I am a professional nerd, right? I get to talk about deep Star Wars canon, and I read a lot of the Lord of the Rings fan fiction, and I can still name every Pokemon from like the first three gens. I lose it after Gen 4. It's just, there's too many
Right.
now. But like in middle school, because I didn't know who I was, I figured the best way to deal with that was to be who everybody else was.
Mm.
But like a lot of neurodivergent people, we're allergic to bullshit, right? Like we
Mm.
struggle with inauthenticity. Have you ever
Yes.
seen a neurodivergent person be asked to smile for a picture? It's like this.
Yes.
Yeah,
Right? Like
yeah,
it's like
Yeah.
that is the shape a smile is. It's like, but it
yeah.
isn't really. So
Mhm.
like
No.
when I do that, I'm like, I always tell when I need my kids to smile, I'm like, hey kids, poop, and they're going,
Yeah, yeah.
and then that's a real smile.
Right.
So if I could tell my neurodivergent people out there, it's like, be yourself, everybody else is taken, right?
Mm.
And that doesn't mean like, it doesn't mean that it's always safe or smart to like show up to school in like a full Naruto gear, or like you should be quoting facts and figures about the Battle of Hastings or whatever the thing is.
Right.
But if you find the people and places that you can be that version of yourself, like you don't need to hide it. In fact, the best version of you personally, interpersonally, romantically,
Right.
even professionally, is going to show up in
Mhm.
the spaces where you are the best version of you, right? Like being a theater kid in high school really changed my life. And a part of that is that it let me be this sort of like big energy, like, big personality, take up a lot of space, be silly and goofy and fall down. Like it's very theatrical. And now I'm a
Mhm.
professional speaker and a psychologist, and I bring that energy and that training into what I do. So, a lot of neurodivergent people suffer from what we like to call the curse of competence. Like
Mm.
we would
Okay.
probably be okay at a lot of different things, right? If I was like,
Right.
Zareen, you've got to manage a bar now. That's your job now. You'd probably be pretty good at it, like because you're a very capable person. But the work that is aligned with our heart, with our values, that's
Hmm.
when our neurodivergent brain is most aligned with our skills. And then we do the best version of ourselves.
Yes.
Wow.
That really resonates with me quite a bit because I actually have neurodivergency as well. And when it comes to any type of work, when it doesn't align with me, it's not really happening too well. Yeah, big X,
Yep,
big X.
yep, yep.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
that's it just doesn't work, you know? And when I reflect on my journey, that is the truth of like many jobs that I've worked, whether it's like short term it becomes or whatnot. So I appreciate you saying that. I'm actually curious with your journey with neurodivergency. When was it you were saying that you kind of embraced it in high school years? What kind of changed for you where you were, I guess, like more aware of this, that, you know what, this is totally cool. This is who I am. And how did that progress into like your adult years?
So, yeah, I mean, and it's funny, I talk about this in my book. It really embraced it for lack of other options because, in grade 8 here in the US, it's the end of middle school, and it's a very
yeah.
socially tumultuous time.
Hmm.
And I remember coming back to school from summer vacation at the beginning of 8th grade, and there was this sense that everybody else had leveled up, but I hadn't. Like everybody else got the downloaded plugin, and I didn't. And all of a sudden, the social rules were really different. And I just felt so out of sorts, so out of sync. And it was really the first time in my life I felt like I couldn't go along to get along. Like there was like everybody was doing something different.
Right.
And like that's some developmental asynchrony, that's some immaturity, that's some just neurodivergence, like that's all those things. So I was socially ostracized, and then that turned into being really badly bullied.
Mm,
And you start high school, and high school in some ways is a reset, but it's like, what do you reset into? Right. I
mm,
always tell my clients, like, you can't replace something with nothing. So you have to replace something, in this case, the version of you were, with something else, the version of you're trying to be.
mm,
And it took me halfway, I played soccer because I always played soccer, but it really wasn't until I like hit my stride in my classes and found a group of friends that was like, yes, we are the smartest people in this school. And no, we should not be embarrassed about that. I'm like, wait, I don't have to pretend to be dumb to fit in. And like,
Right.
why would we pretend? Right. And it's like,
Yeah.
yeah,
okay, all right. And there's that authenticity thing again. Like, I'm not going to
right.
pretend to be 6'8" and like I can dunk a basketball because I'm not and I can't. Right.
Mhm,
But I am pretty damn smart and I am pretty funny and I am a really good artist. And like, so, it really is work smarter, not harder, right?
mm,
All that energy you're spending on trying to pretend you're somebody you're not is really fundamentally energy wasted, right?
right,
Because you're just burning all this energy to like keep your head above water when you could actually just put your freaking feet down,
Oh my
right.
right?
gosh, yeah.
And, you know,
Mhm,
but the thing that I will, an important caveat to this is that you need a place, a community that's going to support that work because it is hard to go it alone, right? I always say, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. So like whatever your thing is, whatever your fandom, whatever your special interest, like LARPers unite, right? Theater kids go to auditions,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Arts kids, like, let's get you to paint a mural somewhere downtown. Like, if you find your people, it's a lot easier to be yourself, right?
mm,
So the paradox of that is like the best way to be yourself is to be together, but you've got to find the right people to be together.
That's
right.
so interesting that you said that because when especially individuals who are neurodivergent, you feel displaced, and
Mhm,
then because you're trying to fit in and you're trying to conform and you're masking so much, like you said you've experienced, and then you find your community of people, and then suddenly you feel that sense of belonging, like I don't have to hide parts of myself, right? And I'm
mhm,
like beautiful the way you explained how like your like childhood experience. For me, I went through quite the same things as well. Like I've been diagnosed with ADHD and all those fun stuff. So it's like when growing up and around high school, you learn, oh, wait, everyone's suddenly going to the gym, or like everyone's like all like having fun, or like it's social, and then me, I'm like, I don't know if I fit in with that. How do I mask myself? Like if I stay out of it, people aren't going to talk to me, people aren't going to let me in to their groups, but I want to belong. And such a beautiful way. And I think that also brings up like the fact that almost a lot of people who are neurodivergent do have some similar experiences with that growing
mhm.
up. Have you, well, I guess I don't want to pry deeply into your personal life, but is
An
there like a
open book,
time?
dude. Ask
Okay.
away,
Awesome.
right?
Great. Can you tell me like a time about like when you felt out of place, like anything you've like experienced in terms of like not belonging?
I mean, we got plenty, right? Lots of stories, right? You know, and I think probably so there's this so the language we use for this in the field is neurotypical people tend to be context dependent, right?
Mm.
So whatever the context is, they naturally adapt to that context, right? So if I'm at a funeral, I'm going to be this version of me. If I'm at a bachelor party, I'm going to be this version of me. I'm going to be at a Toronto FC game, I'm going to be this version of me, right? Neurodivergent people tend to be context independent. We are who we are kind of all the time. And so when I went to college, I was like, all right, I figured out this whole high school thing. I have a good idea of who I am, and I'm going to go to college and do the same things.
Right.
Well, the problem with college is that all the people who were the best at what they did in high school all went to that same college. I went to Wake Forest University, which is, a very good school here in the States. So one of the really funny things about being a neurodivergent person is so many things come so easy to us. The idea of hard work can be very challenging. It can be very triggering, right? So I never had to practice to do plays or shows or choir, even though I wasn't very good at them because I went to a very small high school and like my natural talent got me in the door and then they coached me up when I was inside. But now at college, the door to entry was so much higher that I needed to be coached up to even be able to knock on the door to maybe even get in. I was like, oh, I'll do choir. And they were like, dude, you can't sing. I'm like, oh crap. I'm like, okay, well, I'll
Yeah.
act in plays. They're like, you're not a theater major. You're at the bottom of that list and you're already a freshman. I was like, oh damn. And then you talk to kids like, yeah, I've been in acting classes for 7 years. I'm like, there are acting classes,
Right.
right? No, it's not just a thing you have and just manifest it.
No.
So and like when your identity is so tied to the things you do, then if you're not connected to the things you're doing, you don't really have community. So I
Mm.
came this close to transferring colleges. I was like, all right, maybe this is just not the place for me. Right. And I had filled out the paperwork. I was ready to, turn it in. And listen, if I had done it, it probably would have been fine. Right.
Yeah.
You know, I am infinitely glad that I stuck it out because, many of my best friends in the entire universe, I went to college with and, but it's one of those things that it's where you learn that it's talent is not enough and interest is not enough. It is the intersection of talent and interest and opportunity. And opportunity is a thing that you only have so much control over, right? You
Right.
can't
Right.
really control how much talent you have. It's a thing you have. Interest is a thing you have some impact on, but opportunity, all you can do is knock on a bunch of doors and hope some of them open for you. Right. And there is no hard and fast rule on when to cut bait, like when to bounce and say, like, oh, this isn't the party for me. This isn't the job for me. Some of you've just got to know in your gut and have people that you trust that you can bounce those ideas off of. And, it worked out for me and I'm thankful for that. There are lots of people it doesn't work out for. So
That's
you
true.
have to,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So
Right.
it's really about, being willing to pay attention to how environments are shifting and have people that you trust that you can ask those questions to, right?
Right.
Something's as simple as like, hey, listen, I feel like I'm not getting the unwritten rules here. What are the unwritten rules of surviving in this setting? It's like, well, we don't talk to each other like this. Or, yeah, dude, everybody here is really chill and you're coming in here like you're like a cannonball in a pool party. Like,
Right.
just take it down a notch. And like, if you can get that feedback from people, then the idea is that you're not selling yourself out, you're adapting to the different demands of a different environment.
Right.
And that's a
Mm.
life skill.
Yeah.
Zareen, you probably have a question, but like
Yeah.
I'm dying to ask this one
Sure.
because you talked about feedback, and I think feedback is super important, and communication for people who are neurodivergent is something that's very important. For me, it is. I know, like I'm an over communicator, and I'd rather be an over communicator than an under communicator. But with that being said, let's talk a bit about rejection sensitivity, because
Mm.
feedback is something we welcome, but also we're not the best at handling rejection. And I want to know what you think about that.
Yeah, I mean it's the Gollum Schmeagol meme from Lord of the Rings. Like,
Right.
I likes the feedback, but me hates it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Trixie Hobbits is, like I said, professional nerd, right?
Right.
So
Yeah.
Love it.
um So it's one of those things. There are two ways to think about this. One is think about feedback as an inoculation, right? The more you get it, the stronger your immune system gets, right?
Mm,
And things that make us feel anxious and bad, we avoid because our body's like, I don't want to feel anxious and bad. So I will not do this. So we avoid feedback. We avoid hard conversations because we don't want to feel the thing. But paradoxically, the less often we feel the thing, the more it hurts us. So it's actually like we actually need to put ourselves in the position to get feedback, right? But sometimes that means that we need to sort of manage up, right? So if you're talking to your boss and your boss comes at your feedback in this sort of way, it takes a lot of courage, but to say something like, hey, listen, I do best when I get this kind of feedback in this way. This doesn't mean you have to tell me I'm perfect and everything I do is great and wonderful. I know that's not true.
Right.
But if you come at me and you're like, Rameth, you are a sloppy late slob,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if the next thing you say is, and you're my best salesman,
Yeah.
because my brain is now like hyper fixated on that, like terrible news, right? So it's like, the compliment sandwich is a little bit overdone, but it's better than zero.
mm,
So it's like, hey, listen, you are an amazing salesman. You're awesome. Your clients love you. I think you need to work on your professional presentation a little bit, and we can talk about how to do that. But the most important thing to take from here is that this is not something you're failing at. This is something that if you do it better, you will get better results.
mm.
Right. It's the same content, but it just takes a little bit of effort to shift it properly. And it's the sort of thing when I talk to companies and they're like, oh, well, we don't have time to do that. I'm like, listen, if you just come in there and you give people hard feedback, you're going to have to do like 9 HR meetings about the hard feedback and feelings are going to get hurt and you're going to have to talk to your union rep and it's going to be a whole thing.
Right.
Or do a little bit more work up front to do a lot less work later, right? And I mean, I handle that with my clients, I handle that with my corporate partners, I handle that with my own children.
Right.
Conversations are inherently about compromise, right? Because the person I'm talking to also matters, also exists. They have needs and wants and strengths and weaknesses and likes and dislikes. And if I don't honor that stuff, then I'm actually kind of being an asshole,
Right. Yeah.
whether I mean to
Yeah.
or not. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, there's a reason that when the found money joke that I did before, I mentioned a toonie, not a dollar,
You're
right?
right.
Right? Because I know I'm talking to people who are not of my country, and
Right.
Yeah.
right,
You want to relate.
Yeah,
right.
exactly.
And it doesn't take much,
No.
right?
Mhm.
But it goes a long way.
But also it's all about it just kind of paying attention to who you're talking to,
Yes.
and making them feel seen and heard and
Mhm.
that their needs are met. And it's beautiful you said that because in peace building, the work that we do, we come across that a lot, right? Like we're coming to the table with a bit of compromise instead of being like, this is what we want. No, we're being like, hey, this is what we think. What do you think we want? Or like,
Yeah.
here's where you think. Like, we want to be open to that dialogue, but come at it with like a trauma-informed lens, right?
Right.
And that's like kind of what you do with one-on-one and one-on-one therapy and also with folks with neurodivergency. So I thought that was beautiful. Zareen, did you have?
Yeah, absolutely. I actually want to dip into the humor side of things. So
Oh.
I've noticed that in your videos and your presentations, even like right now, you're quite comedic. And where does that come from? And how does that relate to your clientele? And my second follow-up question to that is, does this relate to trauma at all? Is this a way to, a masking or a coping mechanism for some is to make everything comedy? But I just want to know, like, is this like your personality? Like you're connecting with clients a bit better this way, the humor aspect of things.
Yeah. Well, it's a load-bearing coping strategy. Thank you very much. Yes, I'll take my trauma with the side of comedy. Thank you.
Thank you.
So there's some really interesting neuroscience behind this, right? So when we're stressed out and anxious, our bodies release cortisol. Cortisol is a stress hormone. And a little bit is good. A lot of it is actually toxic to us over time. That's why chronic stress has all these health problems that come with it. But when we laugh, our bodies release endorphins, specifically norepinephrine, right? And what that tells us, and like norepinephrine and cortisol cannot coexist, right? So norepinephrine will like swamp the cortisol. and flush that out of our system. So when we're tired, stressed, overwhelmed, anxious, laughter is quite literally the best medicine, right? So many years ago, I worked at a treatment facility for kids with severe behavioral disorders. And there was a really interesting workplace dynamic there because you had a lot of these white kids who worked there who had gone to college, had bachelor's degrees in psychology, who were trying to use this job to get a higher level of education. But since you didn't need a college education to work there, there also were a lot of high school graduates there, many of whom were people of color from greater Camden, New Jersey. And Camden is one of the poorest communities on the East Coast of the United States. So you have this really interesting dynamic of upper middle class to upper class white people who are educated and lower class people of color who had less education. Now, to fully unpack that would be an entirely separate conversation, right?
Right.
But just to paint the picture. But we had a little basketball hoop in the courtyard and we were shooting. And if the case is not abundantly clear, I'm the whitest guy who ever white guyed. Um, and we're playing basketball and I hit a jump shot over one of my colleagues, Amir, who had played very high level basketball in Camden, who could dunk a basketball. And I was like, that's how we do it in the suburbs, bro.
Right.
And he's talking about race is really hard if you're a white person, right? And he looked at me and he was like, this guy punched me in the shoulder, and we had a good laugh about it because obviously if we were playing 1-on-1 to 10, he would win 100 times out of 100.
Yeah.
He's a better basketball player than me.
Right.
But if you can use the inherent tension that hard conversations imply and use a joke to release that tension, that's catharsis, right? Psychology speaking, the release of that emotional energy is incredibly healthy, right? So you cannot use jokes all the time, right? But it's a tool in your toolbox. I particularly use jokes because to me, I think it's a way to disarm people, but it's a way to remind ourselves that as serious as the work we do is, none of us are making it out alive. Right? When we take it too seriously, we burn ourselves out, we drag ourselves down, we actually end up being less capable. Right? So the comedy of something is sometimes the best you can do is the best you can do, and sometimes the best you can do sucks.
Yeah.
But if you're able to laugh about it, I think it positions you to see yourself as growth and process rather than if I'm not perfect at this, everybody dies.
Right.
Because God, it's really not that seriously. And frankly, if the situation were that seriously, your body would tell you. I mean, you would be very aware if this was a life or death situation. The problem is our sympathetic nervous systems can't tell the difference between, oh my gosh, she left me on red on Tinder, and there's a guy sticking a shotgun in my face, right?
Yeah.
Our bodies can't tell the difference. So
Right.
if we laugh about it and our bodies respond to that as a coping strategy, it's cool, this was actually not a life or death situation. And I can have a chuckle about that modern dating is the absolute worst, and we move on with our lives.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
peace builders and educators, we often miss that, right? Because we're so focused on getting that result. We're we
Yeah.
forget to disarm people sometimes from the situation, remove themselves.
Yeah.
And also just ground ourselves with humor. So I think that's such a beautiful point you make. Do you think there's anything else that peace builders and educators and other folks like you who do work with neurodivergent people and people from different backgrounds, honestly, what are we missing? What is something that we're not addressing, what we're not really paying attention to?
So when I start every therapy session I do, I always tell the kids, listen, I know all the psychology stuff. I went to 5 years of graduate school. They don't just give these doctorates away. I can tell you all the psychology things, but you are the expert of you. Nobody knows your story better than you. So what we're going to do is this isn't the Dr. Matt show and I just talk at you for an hour. When we meet in the middle, that's how we do the best work, right?
Yeah.
I'm never going to know what it's like to be either of you. But if I can position myself as someone who can sit down, shut the hell up, and listen, I'm going to make a more targeted, effective solution than I would be if I come in saying, I know what's up. And Americans are much worse about this than Canadians, but broadly speaking, let's say the West, right? Western civilization. We tend to come to conversations from a place of, we have the power and privilege, listen to us and we'll help you. And it's yeah, dude, that's cool. But did you hear that story about that organization who they were working with a community in the Indian subcontinent, and they're like, oh my gosh, there's so much food scarcity here, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to train them how to cook, and we're going to help them this. And the guy they brought in was a famous cheeseburger cook. Now, I'm not sure how
Right.
familiar you are with how things go, but there's something about cows. Gosh, what was it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Sure, you can make burgers out of basically anything, and the guy pivoted, but like your go-to strategy was to bring cheeseburgers or hamburgers to the table in a place that's culturally is famously averse to hamburgers, right?
Right.
Yep.
Right.
Right. So, when you're doing the peace building work, it starts from a place of what do I need to know about you and from you to serve you best?
Mhm.
And then you marry that with the knowledge you have, but it's a collaborative thing. It's a communication thing, right? I think helpful language for this is what I like to call a third door solution. Right.
Mm.
So it's like, if I can do all these things, right, and Zareen wants all these things, it might feel like either I win and Zareen listens to me, or Zareen wins and I listen to her.
Right.
But the third door here is the inherent compromise. Like, listen, I can't do these 3 things you need me to do, but I can do these 4 things you need me to do, right? I would really like to do this 7th thing. Could we add that in? And we're collaborating, we're meeting in the middle, right? That's what good peace building is. Because if, you come to the table like reparations and you're like committees.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, like we're never going to get off the launching pad.
Yeah.
But if it's like,
Exactly.
of course you want reparations. Holy crap, who wouldn't? I'm not sure how much of that I can do, but tell me more so I know what my entry point is. Because it's a really helpful when you're in this sort of broad social justice work,
Yeah.
anything that's inherently complex and interpersonal and intersectional, like the work we all do,
Right.
it's easy to find yourself in a mindset of, I have to fix it. It is broken and I must fix it.
It's true.
But that's an end game strategy that
Yes.
may not be possible or certainly not practical.
Mhm.
So instead, what we try and do is bottom up thinking.
Mm.
The idea here is that the default of any action is 0.
Mhm.
Right.
None of us had to get out of bed this morning. None of us had to put on shirts this morning, right? None of us had to get on this call, but we all did. And maybe this is the worst Riverside recording you guys have ever done. You're like, well, this is 53 minutes of my life I'm not getting back. That sucks. I'm really sorry. But it's not nothing. So if you have a conversation and a person from, let's say, like a native Canadian peoples, they're like, wow, I've never met with a peace building organization who didn't dismiss me outright.
Mm.
They can't give us what I want, but there are organizations out there who are willing to listen to us. That's not nothing. And the
Mhm.
idea is that's bottom up thinking. We start at 0, and every step we take up the ladder is closer and closer to the summit of justice. It might take us 100 million steps. It might take us
Yeah.
7 steps. We don't know. But the idea is if we think I have to fix it, then we are doing top down thinking, and anything less than fixed is bad.
Mhm.
And anything that's bad bumps us out and hurts our stakeholders. So the idea is like, I remember like there was a school I worked with, we had a very contentious relationship, and I kept trying to figure out like what's the baked good? There's a baked good they want. What is, and I don't have Tim Hortons in the United States, so I can't bring them Tim Hortons.
You can't.
But it was like, was it muffins? Was it crullers? And it turns out the thing that they wanted was croissants, right? Like, delicious. Who doesn't love a
Right.
croissant with jam? So, and I finally figured it out, and I brought them croissants with jam. I was like, listen, we've had a lot of hard conversations. Everybody in this room is working their butts off. I don't think we're going to solve this today. However, let us at least know that we've got food we all can eat together.
Mhm.
And it, this isn't a movie. It didn't like snap, we did it. But the next meeting after that was visibly warmer. And the next meeting
Mm.
after that was much more productive. And the next meeting
Right.
after that, we came to a solution we could all live with. And it
Right.
started with the power of the croissants, right? So, that's the thing. Like we are always climbing towards a better outcome, but it doesn't mean we're not getting anything done along the way towards climbing that mountain.
Right.
Mm.
It all amounts to something.
Yeah. I actually wanted to touch base on your peace building work, actually, and how you are normalizing neurodivergency and your journey with humanizing this trait in all of people who are working through this journey. What are some, I guess, stories? It could be personal or from your clientele. When you work with clients, what are some changes that you see over time? And have you seen or have you worked with clients from a younger age and then later seen them in adult years?
I mean, I've been very blessed to see a lot of big changes in the people and the systems I work with. And, in psychology, we measure everything through what I call the big three, which is frequency, intensity, and duration. So the goal of therapy is not to not be anxious, right? Because actually living life without anxiety would be dangerous. But less anxiety, less often for shorter periods of time, that's a good goal, right? So if someone's doing a maladaptive behavior, let's say they're quick to judgment, right? Neurodivergent people can be very black and white thinkers. Their brains move very fast. So it's like people who wear blue print shirts are awful. I've made this snap judgment and therefore Zareen is bad.
Yeah.
But like what progress looks like in therapy and this kind of peace building that I do is, hey, listen, I'm predisposed to think this, but what if I gave Zareen a chance? Let's see how this conversation goes. Worst case scenario, people who wear blueprint shirts are terrible, and I was right. Best case scenario, we've finally found the exception that proves the rule. How interesting. Right. So, because I tell everybody I work with, there are two fundamental truths of this work. One is if it was easy, you would have done it already. Right. So if you have trouble focusing, well, damn, the easy solution there is to just focus. Haha. But since our brains don't let us do that easily, right, then let us immediately move to a place of, okay, if just focusing should be easy and they're not doing so, instead of blaming them and being like, oh, you should be focusing, we're saying, okay, let's assume positive intent. Let's assume that they're trying to do their best and what they're trying isn't working. Now I'm collaborating with them, thinking about what services I can add.
Right.
And then the other side of this, and this is the client side, is that neurodivergence is always context, but it's never an excuse. Right? So let's say you're a theater kid and you're dyslexic and you're having a tough time reading the script. Well, if you don't ask for help, if you don't put yourself out there to say like, hey, I can't read my lines, which is why I have not memorized my lines, without the vital context of knowing that you're neurodivergent, your director's going to cut you from the show, right? So, it is this idea of, on one side, knowing that if it was easy, they would have done it already. So therefore, let's be curious about why they're not doing it. And then your neurodivergence is a necessary context, but it doesn't mean, gosh, I have ADHD. I can't pay attention, so I just won't, because that's also not okay, right? That's the balance between those two frames.
You put it perfectly when you said that you kind of need to balance both the fact that there is neurodivergency and there's also certain expectations that from or like what you're expected to do in life, and that brings me kind of back to thinking about, oh gosh, how do I even put this into words? Kind of like, this is my ADHD brain kind of trying to find the right words. I apologize, but
You're good.
But it's also like, how do I find safety in a world where we don't feel safe, especially intersectional identities, right? You work a lot, you're a huge ally to the 2+ LGBTQIA community, you do a lot of advocacy for them, and then you see with a lot of folks who are from these communities, who are having these identities, marginalized identities as well, you see that you see neurodivergency, but you also see complex trauma. Where does safety come into that? How do you make someone safe?
If we only were responsible for our own safety, none of us would ever leave the house. Especially if you're of a marginalized community, right? If you're a cishet white dude, yeah, you can walk anywhere. You're like, hey, the world was built for and by me. Congratulations, I can go wherever the hell I want.
Right, yeah.
Right? But like, I mean, if you stopped and paid attention, do anything at all, I mean, none of us would leave our front doors. But the world that we need to interface with is out there, right? So what I say is, don't treat the world as a monolith. It's not a singular thing. It's, if you're at work, do you have people that you can support with at work? Like, can you find an employee resource group, an ERG? Can you find a mentor? Someone who's like, yes, I'm the director of sales. I also have ADHD. I will mentor you, right? because the idea is that we can't stop being who we are. And there are even being able to mask or pass, if we want to use those two languages, right, is a place of immense privilege, right? So those of us like, you know, I'm white, so I can be white and whatever. I mean, Rameth, like you're not a person who can pretend to be white, I don't think, right? That's
I've tried.
yeah.
It's not gone too well.
Hello, friends.
Yes. My British accent is not as good as you think it is.
How about the local sports team
Right.
and see,
No.
right? Yeah, it's not
And then
like yeah. So the idea is like when you're in places that passing or masking is not an option, that's when community becomes more important. And there's a guy I work with who, his team at his tech company, like if the right mix of people aren't going to be in the office that day, he is allowed to go home and work from home. Like, and it's a bit of a pain in the ass. He's got to get all the way to work, and then he realizes the people aren't there, and like, so they create a Slack channel where they start talking to each other about like,
right.
who's coming in this week, and because they need each other to regulate each other, they need each
Mm.
other to share that same language, and that's the kind of problem solving, solution building that is not just possible, but also it's practical. Let's work smart, not hard. And the people who help us survive the systems are the people who allow us to be more successful in the world. I mean, the fact is, it's not that safe out there for a lot of people right now.
Mhm.
So I would never tell you to walk across that part of town by yourself. I can ask you to across that part of town in a group. Now that doesn't make you capital S safe, but it makes you safer, right? And if you can't go to a family gathering because there are unsafe people there, well, then you do the safest version of going to that family gathering, which is maybe you show up for 5 minutes, grab a cupcake and go. Maybe it's you zoom in at some point and like, why can't we get here in person? You're like, things and stuff have occurred. Right.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is what you're saying is it's not about being safe, it's about finding what can make you safer.
Right. Yeah. Because if you chase safety as like a concept,
Right.
Right.
it's like chasing happiness. As soon as you get it, like, is this enough? How long will it last? What's going on? It's you are chasing the best version of that feeling, knowing that feeling is going to be different in different environments, right? There are people with whom that I'm instantly happy and will stay happy for a really long time. There are people in my life that I'm like, this is gonna suck. I just hope it sucks less.
Yeah.
Right? And safe is a very similar thing. If you've got an unsafe person around, it is irresponsible and unrealistic to say, just leave. Because if that person is your boss, or that person is your landlord, or that person is a really scary Lyft driver, then it's not always possible to do those things. But you can accommodate through those situations by having allies, by having community, and most importantly, knowing how to ask for help.
Mm.
That's such an interesting way of putting that because you're always conditioned to find the answer. You're not considerate about the journey of like how do we get there? What do we want to do to make ourselves feel better along the way instead of finding that one true thing that we want to be achieved.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's really nice the way you put it. My final question from my end, and I'm sorry, and I'm sure you have questions, but
Definitely.
I just wanted to say why. Like or like ask you why. Why even bother? And I think this might come across as a bit of a odd question, but like why even bother with trying to solve problems for people? Why bother with trauma? Why is it important that we give attention to people with neurodivergence, to people with or for people with who come from different communities and backgrounds? What's the importance of the work that you do? Like, is it necessary?
I mean, there are times I wrestle with that. I mean, why do we fight the hard fights? The world is a far more interesting place and it's a far richer place when there are more seats and more voices at the table.
Mm.
And to have those authentic voices there, I mean, listen, the price of admission is to deal with the reasons that why they weren't there in the first place, right? And I'll tell you this, like I've never regretted fighting for somebody. I've
Mm.
never regretted being an ally. And sometimes it's bitten me in the ass, but doing right is always right. And that's what honestly gets me up in the morning, right? I mean, I don't want to be in a world that is the same story from everybody I meet, where everybody looks like me, thinks like me, talks like me. believes like me, like we are a richer and more, and we all help each other grow when the community brings a cornucopia, a mosaic of experiences and
Hmm.
visions, likes and values. I mean, because I was a really strong artist growing up. And all anyone ever told me is how good at art I was. No one ever helped me get better at art, right? So whatever potential I had in artist, some of it is unrealized because no one ever said, cool, here's how I can get you to the next level, right? I can't tell you how to make the world more welcoming for black and brown people. Shoot, man, but I know that as a person with immense privilege, I can build a bigger table, not a taller fence, right?
Mm,
So, I mean, really, and that's I think fundamentally why this work is so important because it comes from a place of humility and it comes from a place of equity.
mm,
I know I can't do it, which is humility. And
mm.
equity is let's find the people who can, whoever they are, wherever they come from, whatever they look like, whoever they love, whatever they believe. I mean, because I am not so arrogant to think that the world begins and ends with me, the cishet white dude.
Right.
Mm. Wow, that was so profound what you just shared. Just beautifully said, and thank you so much for all the work that you've been doing. I just feel like there's not enough around for neurodivergency and like the awareness, and it's kind of like a new learning here in Canada, I find. I find that, and speaking from my own culture, which is South Asian, we do not believe in this kind of stuff. Like culturally, not neurodivergency, mental health. A lot of parents will look at their children and be like, "There's nothing wrong with him. Give him a nice slap and send him to school. You do you, right?" So, how do you battle cultural beliefs when you see a child or an adult has some is diagnosed with neurodivergency, and how do you battle these cultural norms?
Wait, before you answer that, I just want to preface that by saying that recently I was looking into therapy and well, I do go to therapy, but I was also looking into like therapy with people from my own background because I've found when I have sessions of therapy, like they're like, oh, you should cut off your mom and dad and like you should be cut off from your family.
Yes.
I'm like,
Yes.
yeah, but yeah, do I have trauma? Do I have all of that? Sure, but I'm not gonna be like, screw
Yeah,
you and like leave my
exactly.
family. And I think that's a very white and Western centric way of thinking. And
Yeah.
that's such a good question you raised there.
Thank you.
I mean, I think that you cannot help where you're from, but you do get to choose your relationship with that. And maybe you can't cut off your mom because there's a lot of cultural stuff around that. But the funny thing is, in the broad scheme of things, cutting somebody off it's not easy, but it's simple. It's a very simple solution.
Oh
Just
yeah.
don't talk to them. Bing bang boom. Just don't go
Yeah.
there.
Hmm.
There are times where we cannot control the extent to which we have to interact with something that is you know harmful to us in some way.
Hmm.
So it's not a binary yes or no, it's a scalar question,
Right.
right? So if you have a problematic relationship with your mom, you can say, listen, these are the things I'm going to talk to you about, these are the things I'm not going to talk to you about. If you talk about those things, I'm going to end that conversation.
Right.
Like, well, honey, you don't get to talk to me that way. You also don't get to talk to me the way you talk to me, right?
Right.
And when I tell parents, when I do this work with them, it's like, let's look at your kid right now. They're getting poor grades. They're struggling with, they get upset and they punch a hole in the wall. They are struggling at university. They're struggling to hold a job. Do you genuinely think that they would wake up this morning and choose to feel this way? Like, well, they're lazy. They're like, no, 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 hold on. Do you think they would choose to feel this way? No, nobody would choose to feel this way. Right. So I'm not going to say they don't own some responsibility here because all of us own some responsibility for the things that happen to us, but some is not all. Right. And like our parents, our bosses, our teachers, our mental health professionals all have a small piece of the pie chart that creates the mosaic of why we're doing what we're doing. Right. So when you approach that through a cultural lens without getting into ideas of diagnosis or labels or anything like that, it's just like, hey, this person you love is struggling. Do you think they would be choosing to struggle? Most of us would not choose to struggle if it was up to us. So logically, if that holds, then the reason they're struggling must be something outside them. We just need to work together to figure out what that is.
Hmm.
Oh wow. Yeah, that makes sense because it's like again that compromise where you find that the balance between what is it, what isn't, and finding how you can maintain those relationships. I loved our conversation. I loved how you really took the time to talk through, and I keep telling this to Zareen every time we get to do this, it's like free therapy, or at least I get paid almost to
Yeah.
do the
Yeah,
therapy. So
yeah.
that's fun. Thank you, Kahani, for that. But you shared so much with us. It's like you almost have enough to write a book. But hey, you do have a book.
That's
Yeah.
Tell us a
awesome.
bit about your book.
So it's called the Neurodiversity Playbook. Came out late last year. It's a lot of stuff we're talking about today. Like it's about understanding your brain and putting yourself in situations to be successful. If you've enjoyed our conversation, you'll enjoy the book because it's absolutely written in this tone. A lot of pop culture references and elaborate metaphors and rabbit trails that sometimes go to where they're supposed to and sometimes don't. Uh, but yeah, I mean, we would love for you to get a copy of the book. I think it would be helpful to you.
Oh wow, I would love that. No, I've been reading a
Absolutely.
lot of books about neurodivergency, and one of the books that I've grown up with was well, it's not really it's more of like a autobiographical slash fiction book called Off Center by Harish Sharma. I'm not
Okay.
sure if you're familiar with it. It's a beautiful book about a Malaysian or Singaporean child who grew up with neurodivergency and doesn't feel like they're part of that center of the spectrum where people expect you to be. And then, you'll read books from like Gabor Mate and you
Hmm.
learn so
Hmm.
much. So I'm excited to read your book and
Yeah.
and learn more.
That's available in Canada too, right? Like, okay, awesome.
Beautiful. Is there anything else you would like to share, like where people can find your work?
Yeah, I mean, so I'm a clinical psychologist. And our name of our therapy practice is the neurodiversitycollective.com. And I'm also a professional speaker. So that's probably easier to do in Canada. And that's drmattsagreski.com. So I would say
Amazing.
if you need me for you, it's the Neurodiversity Collective. If you need me for your organization, it's drmattsagreski.com.
Amazing.
Awesome.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you guys.
Yeah,
Thank
no,
you.
I love this conversation as usual. Every time I'm like, I want to talk for like 5 hours, but yeah,
Lots of questions, lots of
times,
things.
yeah,
I really value your wisdom that you shared
no,
today. Thank you so much.
absolutely. Thank you so much.